Hey folks, David Stewart here. Hope you guys are having a fantastic day. Let's talk about eminent domain and food deserts and Seattle. I came across a really interesting story over on Twitter a couple days ago, and it got me thinking and got me reading. And so I'll give you the rundown here. It's basically that Seattle wants to ban grocery stores from closing. Of course, this isn't really going to work. But they did introduce a bill that would allow you to use eminent domain to seize grocery stores if they threaten to close and then make them government run grocery stores. Now, what they've actually done is they've made it, this is an actual law they've passed, they made it so you can't have restrictive covenants on people taking over leases. For instance, if a grocery store chose to close down, the next person to take over the lease might have a restriction on opening that same kind of business. So if Rite Aid closed down, you couldn't have a Walgreens come in there. And actually, I agree with that. I think that's good. I think trying to stop businesses from having the same kind of business when you don't want to have your business open there is a little bit ridiculous. But, you know, if everybody agrees to it, if it's part of the contract, I think that also works as well. The thing is, I think the more interesting part is the idea of seizing businesses with using eminent domain because they close, which is a little bit crazy when you think about it. What do you mean you can just seize the property if I don't want to stay open? Like, you have to stay open. Why do grocery stores close? Why does any store close? The stores close not because they hate the people that are coming in there, though they might. They don't close because the store owners are especially greedy. It's because that store doesn't make money. If the store made money, you would want to keep it open because it would make money. So the people who own the business would make money and the employees would get paid and it would be good. So when stores don't make money, that's usually when you close the store. So if a grocery store is not making money, and it says, we have to close, we can't pay our expenses, and the government says, well, you can't close or we'll seize the property. It's like, oh, you're going to seize our property using eminent domain. Wait, you have to pay us market value for the property? Well, then it's really easy to close the store and get the hell out of there, right? Because you have a guaranteed buyer for your real estate that's probably in a really bad part of town. Because you think about it like this. Food deserts. You hear this term thrown around. What the hell is a food desert? A food desert is just an urban area where there's not a lot of grocery stores. And you're like, well, why aren't there a lot of grocery stores in that area? And the answer is because of the people that live around those grocery stores steal a lot. That's basically what it is. Because of crime, loss, it's just too expensive to keep the grocery store open. Or if you're going to have the grocery store be open, you have to jack the prices up. This has been an economic phenomenon that's been studied a couple times, what some people call like the crime tax or the urban, like the inner city tax or whatever. Basically, goods cost more in crime-ridden areas because that has to offset the cost of doing business in there. There's a higher risk of being killed if you have a store in a high crime area, so you charge comparatively higher prices for that. So there's effectively a tax on living in a high crime area. This would be kind of tangential to that, but it's like, if you can't keep your grocery store open because things are getting stolen too much, your windows are getting broken, you have to pay to replace them. People are getting injured in your parking lot, which puts you in a liability risk. Your insurance premiums go up in a high crime area because there's so much more risk of somebody being hurt or things being stolen or your store getting burned down. You remember all the riots in 2020. Would you want to be in that part of the city when something goes down? Insurance rates are going to go up. So with all of that in mind, if you're not making money, if you can't charge more food for your food, you only charge so much for food before people are just going to go to like the next store over that's not in a high crime area to buy their food, even if they have to take the bus to do it. So you close down. So now when you close down, you get a guaranteed buyer for your really crappy real estate that no one would normally buy. No one wants to buy. If you close down your grocery store, no one wants to buy the grocery store location. If you close it down because if it's in a high crime area, no one's looking to do that. They're looking to open stores in areas that are growing and don't have high crime. That's where you're usually looking to expand your business. So is this going to work out the way that people think? Probably not, or the way that the mayor thinks. Threatening businesses, saying you have to stay open and you have to operate at a loss, doesn't work. You can't force a company to operate at a loss. They will just choose to not operate anymore. Even if it's like they're on the hook for the lease, it's like if you're losing money anyway, you might as well get rid of the thing that's costing you all the money, which is being open in a high crime area. So I think it's a really interesting thing to think about, because this idea has been floated in multiple cities where there's things that make it hard to own a business. Well, the government can step in and run that business. That's another problem too, because the government can run at a loss, and often does. The government doesn't have to produce profit in order for anything that it does to exist. So if the store doesn't have to run a profit, how are you going to pay for that store? Well, the store comes, the paying for the loss of the store is going to come out of the pockets of the taxpayers. So you have to raise taxes, or you have to have more debt, more bonds that could put the city in a junk bond kind of place where you're paying really high interest rates. It costs the people who live there more because the grocery store is not operating at a profit. And more than that, you'll find that the government-owned grocery store will be much worse than the privately owned grocery store, because there's very little profit motive. If you never have to turn a profit in order to stay open, are you going to be highly motivated to make your establishment really efficient? Are you going to be motivated to get lots of customers in, to treat them well? No, you're not, because if you treat them like garbage, you're still going to stay open. Are you going to be motivated to make sure your food is safe, that you have fresh meat at the meat counter? No, you're not, because if you give everybody food poisoning, you still get to stay open. There's no incentive to do quality if there's basically no termination for it. When we talk about profit and loss in a capitalist system, the loss is really important. The failures are important because that gets rid of things that are economic negatives and frees up resources for the next round of investment. And the players who do well, they get to continue doing well and being even more efficient, competing and delivering better value to the customer. So is a government-run grocery store a bad idea? Probably on multiple levels, because one of the things that might happen is that you might end up with a really bad grocery store full of expired food, cockroaches, and people who spit at the customers or do whatever bad thing to the customers. You might have food that's not in stock. The food that people want to buy isn't in stock because it's they just didn't think to order it, because you can't really get fired for it. Like, who's going to be deciding who gets hired and fired at this thing? Now the employees become government employees. They're maybe part of a government union. The government union thinks you should only be open 6 hours a day. And then it becomes a store that no one actually wants to go to in the inner city because it's so shitty. They're still going to want to drive one town over to go to the Food for Less in the slightly better part of town. And it just becomes a money sink that still is not providing food for the people in that small little area. So you don't even really solve the food desert problem over the long run. You just make a really crappy store that costs the taxpayers a lot of money. And then they have to spend even more money to travel over to the next store that isn't like a dump run by the government. So anyway, those are my thoughts on that. I would love to have your thoughts. Do you think it's a good idea to just try to use, I don't even know if you could, it wouldn't necessarily hold up once you got it through the courts if somebody didn't want to sell their property to the city. But I imagine a lot of these companies would be like, oh, you're going to take our property and pay us for it, this property that we would love to unload and get off of our portfolio. Yeah. Okay. Like, sooner or later, someone's gonna be like, well, we don't want to sell that property. It's like, well, you have to. It's like, okay, we'll go to court. And it's like, this is not, just actually won't qualify for eminent domain. It just won't work for that. That would be my expectation. But in the short term, you'd have businesses that are like, well, we get to get paid to exit this area so that they can open a bad government store. Okay, let's do it. And then we'll open up one in the suburbs where people don't break windows randomly or steal like half the food on the shelves. So anyway, I would love to have your thoughts on that. Leave them to me down below. Don't forget to check out my Substack, linked down below, and my music channel, linked down below. And you can read my books on Amazon by going to Amazon and typing my name in, and then you'll find the books. Or you could find them on Patreon. I have a whole bunch of books that are I rotate them in and out every so often. I have free books on the Patreon, including Keys to Prolific Creativity, and you can get my music as part of a Patreon membership as well. I appreciate it, and I'll see you guys next time. Have a great day.